Let me introduce myself first. I'm Ken Evans. I'm Strategic Communications Director for the city. We obviously sustained in Wichita some storm damage overnight. City crews and departments have been on it since the storm began. I want to give you a brief update, and then I'll turn it over to some of our department directors who can answer some of your more detailed questions. So we had some storm damage overnight. The good news, obviously, is we have no injuries and public safety is protected. I want to make sure people are exercising caution on the roads, and I'm sure that the police department will tell you more about that. We also want to note that questions about storm cleanup we will try and answer as well. We want to make sure that citizens know that we have, due to the amount of damage for this storm, we have determined that citizens need to deal with their normal hauler if they're dealing with storm tree damage on their property. But we have, in recognition of the storm damage and the amount of the storm damage, we will allow for free use of the Brooks landfill through Tuesday. So citizens need to know that. So with us today to deal with some of the more significant damage and the questions that I'm sure you're all focused on, Chief Roger Zanders is here from the Wichita Airport Police and Fire. Joe Pager is here, for Deputy Director of Public Works and Utilities. Troy Hauptman, Parks and Recreation Director. And of course the Wichita Police Department will deal with street safety and those issues. And then we have some other information we will share with you later today via press release. And if you have other questions throughout the day, please contact our staff. Just wanted to turn things over to Chief Zanders now.
Good morning. My name is Roger Zanders, Chief Airport Police and Fire. Just kind of want to give you a little status update on the airports here in the city of Wichita. Primarily Jabara Airport, and then I'll follow up with Eisenhower Airport. As I stated earlier, the storms did cause significant damage to some areas within the city. Primarily Jabara Airport did sustain significant damage to a hangar. Total collapse. This hangar did house 6 aircraft at the time. Again, no one was hurt. The power and gas have been shut off to that location. Jabbar Airport is currently closed due to debris being in the safety areas of the taxiway and runways. Crews are currently at this point in time cleaning up that area, and hopefully first part of this morning we'll be able to turn that over back to Midwest Corporate and get that airport open. As for Eisenhower Airport, we did have some damage, nothing to the extent of Jabara, some fence down, light poles turned over, signs down. I know the interest of the new terminal and parking garage. We have not had any report in any significant damage or very minor damage to maybe some outside parts of the buildings, but nothing significant. Nothing that's going to slow down the construction of that building.
So Eisenhower's still up and running, everything's...
That is correct. Eisenhower has not had any delays. The airport was not closed at any given time.
And back to Jabara, you said the hangar, it completely collapsed. Did it damage or destroy those airplanes that were inside?
Just as this meeting had started, they had reported that the power and gas had been shut off, so we have not had time to get actually inside the hangar to assess the damage to the aircraft.
That's the only hangar that was heavily damaged?
Correct. They did have some roof damage to some of the other hangars and facilities out there, but nothing to the extent of the main hangar.
So that's the main hangar that was damaged?
No, it was actually a hangar just north of Midwest Corporate Aviation, so it was not connected to Midwest Corp. It was separate.
Obviously, last night was not a tornado, a lot of strong winds, straight winds. What did you guys anticipate in anticipation of this storm? Did you guys plan for having damage like this, minimal damage at the airport at all?
Anytime you have a significant storm, you're going to have some damage. And of course, first light, our first priority, obviously, if we're not reported beforehand, is to do a survey of the areas. The straight line winds that were reported, I think were in excess of 80 some miles an hour, so would have caused a lot of damage.
Good morning. Joe Pajor, Deputy Director, Public Works and Utilities. As the storm came through, there was impacts on public work and utility facilities across the area. We did receive some storm damage to some of the individual wells in our well field, the pump houses of those well fields. We also experienced some power loss in that area that we are responsible for. We're working to restore that power. On the Cheney pump station, we lost Westar power to the Cheney pump station. That pump station is currently operating at normal capacity with its new standby backup generators. Those generators are operating and water is continuing to flow. The main water treatment plant and one of our booster pump stations also lost power. The main water treatment plant pump station regained power shortly after the outage, so there was not an impact on distribution system pressures. The Northeast Booster Station pump station is currently without power. We've done valve around to have water to all of our customers. However, in the extreme northeast part of the city, water pressures are a little lower than normal. The most widespread problem we've had involves traffic signals and traffic signs from wind damage. We are working to address those issues. Motorists are reminded that if they come to an intersection that is dark because it doesn't have power or other issues, that should be treated as a four-way stop. Red flash intersections where all signals are flashing red should also be treated as a four-way stop. Citizens need to be aware that especially early on today, they may approach an intersection and if a signal head is turned, they can see conflicting signal information. Obviously, you want to treat that as a four-way stop before proceeding into the intersection. Wastewater treatment, our main wastewater treatment plants continue to operate. We have a large number of lift stations throughout the city. Those were also experienced power interruptions. Most of them went to backup power. There were no environmental releases, no treatment upsets or overflows as a result of the storm events. We have one fire station, Fire Station 13, that is without power. Public Works and Utilities have taken a trailer-mounted generator, and that station now has emergency power through that generator. And we are continuing to work on our recovery efforts. Happy to take questions.
Going to the traffic signals, do you know an approximate number of how many signals are down? And do you rely on the citizens to call to report those?
Most of the information that we receive on traffic signal problems come from the police department through the Spider Dispatch and then to our electricians. Our electricians have been working since about 1 o'clock this morning. We're triaging the traffic signals to get the ones with the conflicting signals where traffic heads have been turned addressed first. Some of the intersections that we have to deal with we can't even get to yet because of downed transmission lines from Westar, and they have to be cleared before we can get to them. We do have at least one intersection in which Westar facilities fell onto our traffic poles, and those traffic poles are going to have to be replaced as a part of our recovery effort.
Is there a timetable for that replacement?
At this point, the timetable is going to be dependent on when we can get access. The worst of that, in terms of one or two intersections, could be as late as early next week.
Joe, just talk about the storm in general. I mean, were you guys prepared for this? And secondly, how bad is it?
The storm itself was in the forecast, so we were aware that it was coming. What happened is fairly typical for a Kansas spring storm. The storm develops as a squall line. That squall line ended over Wichita. The south end of it was in Wichita. The north end was all the way up into Nebraska, covering most of Nebraska north and south. It appears at this point that there was quite a bit of straight line wind damage, and there may have very well have been microbursts from collapsing storm systems. So the damage that was done was isolated, but where it occurred, some of it was very significant.
No idea on dollar amount or anything at this point?
No, we do not have a dollar amount yet.
citywide?
Damage is citywide. We are working to, we have a lot of things to do, but the good news is that all of our critical facilities are operating either as normal with backup power or with workarounds so that the needs of customers are being met.
And did you bring in extra crews? And can you talk a little bit about workers and?
Yes, we mobilized over the nighttime hours with our traffic signal electricians. We also diverted existing street services, street sweeping and cleaning crews to storm response in order to be able to work on making sure intersections were cleared, streets were open.
How many streets are still closed at this point?
We do not have an inventory of closed streets. Some of those, most of the street closures at this point are a result of West Star lines down and work being done by West Star that you'll need to talk to them about. We are at or very close to having any tree debris that's causing street closures to be resolved so that people can get through. We're initially going through and getting all that debris back of the curb line so that the street's open, and then we'll come back and do the cleanup of the public part of that responsibility.
I know that you already talked a little bit about water, but can you talk a little bit about water safety for people who might be concerned?
Absolutely. All of our customers are receiving normal water in terms of its quality and quantity. There are some areas with lower pressure, but the water is safe to use as normal.
Good morning. My name is Troy Hauptman, the Director of Parks and Recreation. The parks fared very well last night. We've done some inventory in regards to all of our park assets and park inventory of our infrastructure and did not receive any major damage within our parks. What we are doing, though, is double checking all of our parks for this weekend because it's a very a very active weekend with all of our activities in the parks. So we're double checking all of our assets in the parks for tree damage and other vegetation. Where we have been busy is with forestry. Our folks have been out since 1 o'clock in the morning clearing trees out of the streets, and we'll be continue doing that throughout the day. We've called in extra crews for that activity, and we'll be making sure that the streets are clear by the end of the day. And so we're going to be prepared for this weekend for anything that's going on for Easter weekend out in our parks, and we're pretty confident of the safety aspects within our parks for this weekend. So we didn't really receive any damage in our parks, so we've been pretty lucky about that.
Troy, could you spell your last name for me?
Houtman, Houtman.
If folks go out this weekend and see some damage or see, what do you recommend for them to do?
There will be some damage out there in regards to trees that have fallen. We will either have those cleared out or have them marked off with yellow tape, but we've already done an inventory of all of our parks right now and know where that damage is at.
Is there one park that's more popular this Easter weekend than another, or are they all pretty?
They're all going to be used pretty heavily this weekend.
You don't anticipate any problems then?
No.
Good morning, Lieutenant Schroeder, Police Department. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Police Department response last night in regards to the storm. Wichita police officers, anytime a spring storm or summer storm rolls through like this, we'll be out monitoring the storm for severe weather and for damages occurring for the most rapid response by emergency services in the city. Last night, our officers were on patrol when the storm hit and did assist fire with responding to several alarms and calls. However, we've received no reports of any serious injuries or any significant collapses or anything requiring major rescue work occurring last night. However, as it was stated earlier, there were numerous power loss areas and numerous traffic intersections that lost their traffic control signals. Many of these are still out of service right now. So you have several intersections in the city where there are no traffic lights. As was stated earlier, we will remind citizens that anytime you approach a traffic intersection that normally has traffic control signals that it is not operating, you're required to treat that as a four-way stop. In the state of Kansas, first vehicle there has right-of-way. If all vehicles arrive at the same time, then it will be the person to your right would receive the right-of-way. What we do is we just ask people in Wichita to just be courteous of others, understand, and be cautious. And remember that not all people are going to stop to think to recognize the intersections. This morning, one of the problems we ran into was trees and other debris that was in the roadway, was blocking some of the roadways. Officers did set up traffic control points in areas where there were live power lines down and where trees were blocking roadways. At this point, city personnel have placed barricades in areas where the roads are still blocked. We do ask citizens to respect those barricades. Those barricades are there for your protection. Those barricades could be blocking trees, but they could also be blocking power lines that are lying in the street. Power lines are supposed to go dead when they hit the street. However, that doesn't always happen. And we know from experience that those lines could be still electrified, even though they're not arcing or making any noise. There still could be power to those lines, and if you were to step on those lines, it would electrocute you. Therefore, please respect those barricades that are up. They're there for a reason. They're there to protect citizens and keep them out of the areas they don't need to be. Whenever a police vehicle or a barricade is blocking the street, that means the street is closed. It is illegal to drive around the barricade, and it is illegal to drive up on the sidewalk and drive down the sidewalk. You're defeating the entire purpose of the barricade being there and placing yourself in danger when you do those things. So please respect those barricades. They're there for your protection. I'll try to answer any questions I can, if anybody has any.
Joe, and I don't know if you know this, but do you know how many roads are blocked?
No,
right
ma'am.
now?
At this point, I don't have any estimates on to how many roads are blocked. I do know that Webb Road is closed in numerous locations. That seems to be the area where there was a lot of concentrated damage up near Jabera Airport. There are a lot of driveways, a lot of access areas that are being blocked off and are being barricaded. A lot of side streets have a lot of limbs down in them, especially some of our older neighborhoods with bigger trees. Any place where there are limbs in the roadway that is causing a traffic hazard, those have been barricaded and blocked. To my knowledge, officers are starting to be relieved from those locations. The officers who've been in some of the locations overnight are being relieved now that they have barricades up and it is daylight. However, I would point out that some of these barricades may still be up after nightfall tonight. And some of these traffic intersections may still be without power after nightfall. Especially if you're driving in an area you're not familiar with, you need to slow down. Even in areas you're familiar with, if the power's out, the street lights are out, and the traffic signals are not working, it is sometimes difficult to remember where those streets are. And we've seen a lot of people drive through those intersections blindly this morning because they simply forget the streets are there. So please slow down, take your time, be courteous of other drivers so we can avoid anybody getting hurt.
Are there any other major intersections that you know of that are blocked up? I know when I was speaking to officials earlier, they were saying there is some over at Woodlawn, obviously everything at Webb. There was some at Promotion K96. Are there any other areas that people should probably just look out for?
I have no list of what major intersections are still currently blocked. Patrol division the patrol bureaus are handling all those at the bureau level. However, just be cautious of it.
Did you guys bring in extra officers or just who was on patrol at the time?
Last night, the officers on patrol were able to handle all of our law enforcement operations and emergency operations in the city are operating at normal capacity. However, we did hold over the overnight shift just for extra manpower to stay on those barricades. Right now, the officers that should have gotten off at 7 o'clock this morning are just now being released from duty.
Just a very brief update on libraries. We didn't say anything about libraries in the briefing that I recall. I may have missed something. The Comatera branch had closed because of a power outage, so we are sending patrons there to the Rockwell branch for now. The Angelou branch is also closed due to power outage, and we're routing patrons to other branches from there. We'll keep you informed throughout the day. We are going to be issuing a press release this morning, but obviously in situations like this, things will change as we make progress, and the progress looks good so far, but we will let you know, particularly on things like damage estimates, as we get the information in. Okay?
Was EOC activated? Was emergency management activated last night or early this morning?
Actually don't know that.
No, wasn't.
No. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I do have one other question.
Mhm.
I know you guys mentioned no serious injuries. Were there minor injuries? Did you guys see some people hurt from falling debris, anything like that?
There were some minor injuries.
So I expected there would be minor injuries. We wanted to make sure people knew that we didn't know of any major injuries.
We did have some reports of some minor injuries. Most of it was a result of debris that was being blown. We did have winds clocked last night at about 89 miles per hour. So there was some minor injuries from that from persons who were outside. I do know that from what I heard in my briefing, 2 paramedics received minor injuries when a roof was torn off of one of the EMS stations. Those are county employees. They received minor injuries and were treated and released.
And Joe,
Okay. Yes.
and Joe, also, I guess when stuff like this happens, events like this, I guess maybe people come out of the woodworks trying to take advantage of some folks, maybe for repairs and
Yes.
and debris removal.
That's
Can you talk
that's
a little bit about
that's a
that?
very good point. Unfortunately, we have some unscrupulous people who descend on areas. They're not necessarily from Wichita. There are groups of people who travel all over the country this time of year trying to take advantage of people. Anybody who's sustained roof damage, be very leery of anybody who just shows up on your doorstep wanting to look at your roof, making offers to do some miraculous repairs at very low discount prices. Especially contractors who are coming up to you and are soliciting your business and asking for money up front. Many times these are scams. Now, I'm not going to say all of them are, because there are some very reputable businesses who do go out, try to make it convenient for folks who are trying to clean up yard debris, who are trying to make repairs in their home. I would just be very leery of anybody who's wanting upfront payments. Most reputable contractors will have a contract. They will have a license number through the city. They have to be licensed through the city to do work in the city if they're doing any kind of construction work. They'll be able to provide this information for you, present contracts, estimates, and referrals. And I would very strongly suggest if anybody comes up with a very cheap price, money up front, that you check referrals and that they be local referrals, and that I would deal with local businesses in order to get that type of work done, just to avoid any scams.
What about overnight, people taking advantage of no power, getting into businesses, rotaries?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your
I'm
question.
saying, like, what about like overnights while the power was out? Was there any rotaries or any businesses being vandalized?
Not that I have any reports, anything that was out of the ordinary. I don't see, looking through the Interwatch, I did not see anything that appeared to be storm related.